Wasn't that a wonderful reading today? And I'd like to thank Gary Floyd and our CSL music team for our beautiful music. We're in week 15 of our series, This Thing Called You, and this is a chapter about hope, promises of good and strengthening our faith. And today, we recognize ourselves and our brothers and rejoice in our own divinity. You know, last week we talked about raising the veils that keep us from truly allowing our light to shine, and about going into that most holy place to listen to any messages that were being sent. And when we become awakened to what our spiritual purpose is in life, what I know is that we must follow it. And knowing that each day along the journey, it's filled with hope and with a promise of rejoicing in the day. Our topic today is God's Day. You know, we read in the Bible in Psalms 118:24, "This is a day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice in it." Can you imagine a world in which everyone rejoiced in each day? Well, today we're going to learn to rejoice in God's day and discover how we can embrace each day with a faith that's made perfect through love. Believe the voice and receive your good. So here's your question for the day. What's the one choice you can make today to remember that today is God's day, a day the Lord made, in which you can rejoice and know it is filled with great promise? One more time. What is the one choice that you can make today to remember today is God's day, a day the Lord made, in which you can rejoice and know it is filled with great promise? We have President's Day to honor our presidents, Mother's Day to honor mothers, Father's Day to honor fathers, Grandparents' Day to honor grandparents. And yesterday was Earth Day, and we honored the earth. What about a God's Day, where we honor the God that is the one life that is our life right here and right now? Every day should truly be God's day. And do we remember that? In this week's reading, we saw these words. Yesterday is no longer here. Tomorrow has not yet arrived. Today is God's day. God's day is my day. Today, bright with hope and filled with promise, is mine. Consciously, I draw close to my divine center, the source of all that is. I feel the warmth of its presence. I enter into a faith made perfect through love and confidence, an assurance made complete by the abandonment of myself to good. Now, these few words could actually be talks for many Sundays, but don't worry, I'll stick to today's topic. How many of us live yesterdays over and over? Or how many of us fret about the tomorrow that's not yet arrived? What about today, God's day? Today we're going to take time to notice God's day. Whatever the weather, whatever we have on our agenda, just pause and realize we have a day in which to rejoice. In Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes wrote, "By some inner mystic presence, I was told to live and to love, to laugh and be glad. I was told to be still and know of the one almighty power in and through all. I was told to let that power work through and in me. I believed that voice, and I received my good." Wow. What if we each learned to listen to that voice? I know that when I listen to it, I spend my day more in the joy of living. And I suspect I'm more compassionate, more kind, more understanding. I've been doing a lot of pondering this past week or so about how good we humans are at finding flaws and fault, and how poor we are at celebrating our daily successes. How good we are at living in despair rather than hope. And if we truly want to rejoice in God's day, it seems like every night, along with gratitude, we should find something about the day in which to rejoice. My son and my mom were great at that. They lived their lives to the fullest. They lived without judgment. They accepted people for exactly who they were. And they were great examples in my life of living in the joy of God's day. Ernest Holmes in It's Up to You wrote, "Even God cannot give us anything unless we are in a mental condition to receive the gift." Often I can become really good at looking at what's wrong with things and all that has to be done. And I often forget to celebrate all that is right and all that has already been accomplished. And I'm not speaking of accomplishments of the doer, but rather accomplishments about who I've become thus far. In paying attention, it seemed that several times this week I caught myself talking about how I failed rather than how I had succeeded in some small way. I'm sure that we can all relate to that. I think in general, we're very hard on ourselves, and our expectations are that we need to be perfect. That is not so. How many of you remember the last time that you truly celebrated something good that happened to you as you were going to sleep that night? I guess another question might be, are we willing to allow love, in whatever form it shows up for us that day, to lift us up as we begin to rest? Did you know that the last 20 minutes before you sleep are crucial for what your mind thinks about the whole time you're resting? I knew this when I was young because I used to go over my test questions, and the ones I couldn't remember, I would read right before I went to bed. The next morning I would wake up and I always remembered that on the test. Something in me knew that my mind could remember it if I just remembered it right before I went to sleep. I've gotten older, and now the things I want to remember are more about the love that I felt during the day. So, how could we create a new spiritual practice and find the promise of the day and celebrate God's day? That's a good question. I'd like you to think about it for a minute. There's a parable about 2 tigers and 2 mice. Buddha tells a parable about the man traveling across the field, and he encountered a tiger. Well, he fled with the tiger chasing right after him. He came to a precipice, so he caught hold of a root of a wild vine, and he swung himself down over the edge. The tiger sniffed at him from above, and the man was trembling. Then he decided to look down to see how far it was below him. Below him, another tiger, waiting to eat him up. Only the vine sustained him. And along came 2 mice, one black, one white. Little by little, they started to gnaw at the vine. And as they were gnawing, the man saw a luscious strawberry near him. So, grasping the vine with one hand, he plucked the strawberry with the other. put it in his mouth. How sweet it tasted. Now that man knew how to grab enjoyment and find the promise of good in the moment. He was facing death and found a way to savor life through the flavor of that luscious strawberry. Ralph Waldo Emerson advises us, enthusiasm is one of the most powerful engines of success. When you do a thing, do it with all your might. Put your whole soul into it. Stamp it with your own personality. Be active, be energetic, be enthusiastic and faithful, and you will accomplish your object. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. So where in your life have you lost enthusiasm? It takes faith to really live God's day fully every day. Faith that when things appear to be going wrong, we can know there is indeed divine order and that God is in it somewhere. And this requires us to let go of what I call the expectancy bubble. Expecting life to be different than what it is. Expecting others to behave in ways other than their true selves. Expecting that we can change the past by holding on to it. If we could let go of those expectations, wow. All of this would allow us to love ourselves and to love life more. If we had confidence that we were on the right path, can you imagine how much more loving and joyful life might be? At the time of the Buddha, a story is told about a young woman named Kisa Gautami. And she had experienced a series of tragedies. First, her husband and then another close family member died. All that remained for her was her only son. And then he was stricken with illness, and he died as well. Wailing in grief, she carried the body of her dead child everywhere, asking for help, asking for medicine to bring him back to life. But of course, no one could help her. Finally, she was directed to the Buddha, who was teaching in a nearby forest grove. She approached the Buddha, crying with grief, and said, "Great teacher, great master, please bring my boy back to life." And the Buddha replied, "I will do so, but first you must do something for me. You must go into the village and get me a handful of mustard seed." And mustard seed at that time was a very common Indian spice. So he said, "From this mustard seed, I will fashion medicine for your child. However, there's one more thing. The mustard seed must come from a home where no one has died, where no one has lost a child or a parent, a spouse or a friend." Well, Kisa ran into the village and ran into the first house, begging for mustard seed. "Please, please, I have to have some mustard seed." And the people, seeing how she was so much in grief, said, "Of course." Then she asked, "Has anyone in this home died? A mother, a daughter, a father, a son?" And they answered, "Yes, we had a death just last year." So Kisa ran to the next house, again asking for the mustard seed. But when she asked if anyone had died, they said, "Yes, our maiden aunt did just recently." At the next house, it was a young daughter who had died, and so it went from house to house in the village. There was not a single household she could find which had not known death. Finally, she sat down in her sorrow and realized that what had happened to her and to her child happens to everyone, that all who are born will also die. She carried the body of her dead son back to the Buddha, and he was buried with all the proper rites. Then she bowed and asked the Buddha for teachings that would bring her wisdom and refuge in this realm of birth and death. She took these teachings deeply to heart and became a great yogi and a wise woman. In the beginning of that story, Keisha was so absorbed with her own grief that she couldn't see her actions. And there have been times in my life, and I suspect in your life as well, that we can relate to Keisha. Here's something you can do when you feel lost or sad or when things don't feel like they're going right. Learn to ask what's going on in your body. Or pause and ask Holy Spirit, what might I need to know right now? Or how do I need to be loved right now? Even ask for a miracle to heal whatever is happening. And then pause and listen to what you're told. Ernest Holmes in Creative Mind put it this way: the best way to arrive at the highest consciousness is to have a great faith in the willingness and the ability of life to do all for us by working through us. Sometimes we all just need to surrender, get out of our own way, and be confident God is in the situation, that it truly is in divine order. In A Course of Miracles, Lesson 109 states, I rest in God. And the lesson goes on to say, we ask for rest today and quietness, unshaken by the world's appearances. I rest in God. This thought will bring you the rest and quiet, peace and stillness, and the safety and happiness you seek. I rest in God. Imagine yourself resting in the arms of the divine. Would you not be able to make it through any storm in life or strife that shows up if you were truly resting in the arms of God? What if we decided from this day forward, one God's day at a time, we were going to live in the present and in the presence of all that can be and all that we are. And if struggle appears, we'll surrender. We'll have faith and confidence and imagine ourselves resting in God. Don't you think if you did that, that your faith would be made perfect? That you might see God in the acceptance of yourself and others? That you might indeed be the one true self that you are? That you might be able to call each day God's day and feel the rest and the quiet, the peace and the stillness, the safety and the happiness? Do you think you might be able to drop down into the truth of who you are, surrendering to love, as our meditation song said? Do you think that you might be able to accept whatever is happening in your life and grab for that luscious strawberry so that you might savor the sweetness of life? Think about it. And once again, I want to end with a passage from our chapter this week. Yes, it's one of my favorite parts of the book, and it sums up our message. No matter what the negations of yesterday may have been, your affirmations of the day may rise triumphant over them. This is the highest hope ever placed before the vision of man's search for something that can make him whole. The evil of all your yesterdays can vanish into nothingness. If you can see beauty instead of ugliness, beauty will appear. Cease weeping over the mistakes of yesterday and steadfastly hold the face of the great and divine reality. Walk in the light where there is no darkness. Oh, walk in the light where there is no darkness. I invite you to let your affirmations about this being God's day rise triumphant over any negations of yesterday. Allow each day to be bright with hope and filled with promise. Let this be the day that God has made, and thus it is perfection in every moment. So in summary, how might you remember each day as God's day? Today is God's day. Rejoice in it. Draw into your divine center. Live, love, laugh, be glad. Let the power of God work through and in you. Each day truly is bright with hope and filled with promise. So quit finding flaws and fault and learn to celebrate. Allow love in whatever form it shows up for you. Faith is made perfect through love and confidence. So let go of that expectancy bubble and know God is in everything somewhere. Rest in God and find that quietness, that peacefulness, that stillness. So here's your affirmation for the week. How is it I so easily and willingly make the choice today to remember today is God's day and my day, bright with hope and filled with promise, as I enter into a faith made perfect through love and confidence. And I want to challenge you this week to rejoice each day, to find something each day to be glad about. Notice all the hope that surrounds you when you surrender to love. And be confident that this is a day God made, and thus it is good and very good. Check in a couple times a day and just notice how you're doing, and remind yourself to rejoice. It's the day the Lord has made. Let's pray. Just taking a deep, nourishing breath and settling into that space within us where we know the truth of who we are, where we know that we are created as God created us, where we can live in that innocence of the small child that sees nothing but hope and joy and love. What I know to be the truth is that we are each rejoicing in God's day. We are seeing a future that is bright with hope and filled with promise. We're letting go of the flaws and the fault that we find in ourselves and in others, and we are embracing love in whatever form it shows up. So as the week goes by and we let go of that expectancy bubble, we just recognize that God is in everything. And we can rest in that peacefulness, that quietness, that stillness of knowing that it is true, all in divine order. So I am grateful. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be in service. I'm grateful for this community and all that I learned from the wisdom of the people in this community. And I'm grateful to remember every day that the God without is the God within me and within everyone on this planet. So it's from that gratitude that I release my word into the law of mind, spirit, and action, knowing the truth that right where we are, God is, and the divine has already said yes to all of this, already called it good. So I say amen, and we affirm it together. And so it is. I am so grateful to everyone that continues to donate, that continues to allow our community to stay afloat. I appreciate all your donations, and we're in the process of buying a new computer. So if you have a little bit of extra and you want to apply that to our computer fund, that would be fabulous. Enjoy our offertory song.